The bang didn't sound like a door slamming or a chair tipping over. It was too deep, too final, like something metal hitting tile. My heart spiked as I stood there, toothbrush still in my hand like an idiot. My son, calm as ever, leaned against the wall beside the sink like we'd just stepped in to avoid awkward dinner talk, not a trapdoor collapsing beneath our lives. Bathroom, now. Don't ask questions, the text had said. I thought it was a prank, until I saw my son glance at his watch, not with confusion, but precision, like he'd been rehearsed. That's what unsettled me most. The calm. Then she opened the linen closet door. My wife's sister, Anna, eyes wide, hands trembling, whispering like the walls could hear. Do you have your go bag? Cash? Documents? Anna, what the hell is... Now. She shoved a grocery tote into my chest. Already packed, my name on a folder sticking out. You don't have time. Grab the folder. Grab the kid. And for God's sake, don't go out the front. That's when the bang came, followed by the unmistakable sound of the sliding door in the den being thrown open. Then footsteps. Heavy. Not my wife's. Not anyone's who was supposed to be in our house. I grabbed my son's hand. We're going out the side. Anna led us through the garage, bypassing the main entry. The sensor light didn't even flicker when we stepped outside. She had cut it. She'd cut everything. 5 minutes earlier, I'd been carving chicken and laughing at some nonsense about wine legs. My wife had smiled at me. She'd poured seconds for everyone. She'd leaned over and kissed my cheek. And in that same hour, someone was waiting behind our home to, what, walk in, finish something? We slid into the back seat of Anna's SUV. She threw it in reverse before her seatbelt clicked. There's a burner phone in the glove box. Use it to call nobody. Not yet. Anna, I finally snapped. What in the hell is going on? Is my wife... She's not who you think she is, Anna said, her voice already cracking. And you were never supposed to leave that dinner. Let me pause here. Because if you're still listening, you probably already feel it. That slow ache in your chest, that creeping dread when you realize your kid was warned before you. That maybe your entire marriage was a stage set built to trap you, then hit that subscribe button. Over 97% of listeners never do, but this story and the team behind it survive because you do. Back to it. I looked at my son. Did Mom tell you anything? He shook his head. Only that if I ever got a message from Aunt Anna with a certain word, I should listen right away. What word? Redline. And suddenly I knew. I wasn't the father I thought I was. I wasn't the husband I thought I was. I was a chess piece that had just realized it wasn't even on the board. I opened the folder. Page 1 was a copy of my driver's license, except the signature was wrong. Page 2 was a bank statement showing a $130,000 withdrawal I didn't make. Page 3 was a loan application with my social security number and a forged signature. Anna said, skip to page 6. That's where I stopped breathing. It was a printout of a security camera still. My wife, sitting at a diner with a man I didn't know, his hand was on hers, a tablet between them showing a document, Living Trust Amendment, Successor Clause. The date was 6 months ago. The title of the section was circled in red ink. Beneficiary shall receive full management and legal authority in the event of incapacitation or sudden death. My name was nowhere on it. My son's name was, and hers. I slammed the folder shut. She was planning to kill me. Anna didn't argue. She didn't deny. She just drove faster. Behind us, blue and red lights flickered faintly in the rear view, heading toward our neighborhood. That bang wasn't random, she said. You weren't supposed to get up from that table. The folder was heavier than it should have been. Not in weight. Paper's just paper. But in implication. In finality. It was the same red leather folder my wife gave me 5 Christmases ago, monogrammed and cleaned. For your important documents, she said with a wink. Turns out it had been used to bury me. Slowly, Anna hit a sharp left onto a gravel road that wasn't on any GPS. My son, still eerily silent, sat beside me in the back seat. He clutched the backpack he used for sleepovers at his cousin's. Only this time, I knew it had been repacked. The straps were too tight, and it rattled, like something metallic tucked into a side pocket. I reached over and squeezed his hand. He squeezed back, like he was comforting me. That was the part that broke me hardest in that moment. He wasn't confused. He wasn't scared. He knew. Start reading, Anna repeated, her voice flatter now, like someone who'd used up all her adrenaline. Page 6. I opened the folder again, trying not to let my fingers shake. I don't remember turning pages 1 through 5. They were already scorched into my brain. But page 6, that's where the fire started. Trustee revision document, addendum B, my wife's signature, notary stamp, and below it, my name listed under subject. Not trustee, not grantor, subject. Clauses 11 through a revised to reflect updated succession and fiduciary planning in the event of psychological unfitness, criminal investigation, or sudden disappearance. Sole control reverts to the co-trustee. I reread it, then reread it again. Wait, I whispered. She was trying to institutionalize me? Anna didn't answer. She filed mental health claims? I asked louder now. Still no answer. I flipped to page 7. A full psychological profile with my name and date of birth flagged preliminary draft, not for court use. Diagnoses I'd never heard of, behavioral patterns, sleep disturbance logs. Subject shows increasing signs of paranoia and antisocial withdrawal. My hands started to tremble again. I remembered last month my wife encouraging me to take Ambien because I was tossing and turning, the daily multivitamin switch, the unsolicited self-care therapy journal she gave me. It was all prep. She was sedating me, I said, documenting it. Anna nodded, and she had a draft petition ready to go. If she couldn't get you out clean, she was going to file for mental instability. Either way, you'd be out of the picture, and the trust would fall to her, with you alive but legally incapable. She drugged me, I said. Not really to her, not even to myself, just to the world. She wanted a clean exit, no body, no police, just a man too unwell to sign his own name. I wanted to scream, but my son was sitting next to me. Instead, I turned to the next section. Emails, printed out. One between her and a man named Derek Caldwell. Subject, red line readiness. Delay shipment until after dinner. I'll confirm timing after he eats. The time stamp was an hour before I got the text. My stomach turned. The chicken, the wine, the olive oil she made a show of drizzling on the salad. I had taken exactly 2 bites. Then my phone buzzed. Who is Caldwell? I asked. Anna glanced at me in the mirror. He's not a hitman. He's worse. He's an actuary, a state-level planner. She wasn't plotting a crime of passion. She was structuring a disappearance with financial compliance. I felt the last little illusion of my life crack apart. We passed an old gas station, shut down, boarded up. Anna turned onto a dirt road that led behind it. The SUV bounced, headlights off, tires crunching against rock and brush. She filed a quit claim on your property 3 weeks ago, Anna continued. Filed it using a power of attorney you never signed. I opened the folder again. Power of attorney, dated March. I was in Phoenix that day, at a trade show. I'd kept the receipts. It didn't matter. They'd built a paper trail to say otherwise. She backdated an affidavit saying you were lucid and consenting, Anna added. Witnesses, her tennis partner and her cousin. She knew the system, I muttered. She knew how to make it airtight. But she forgot something, Anna said, eyes glinting in the rear view. She forgot who taught me how to dig and who I owed. I looked up. Owed? I'm not doing this for her, she said. Not for you either. I'm doing it for the boy. We pulled up behind a storage unit complex with no signage. One of the units was already open, lights flickering inside. Inside, 2 mattresses, canned food, bottled water, and a large metal briefcase on the table. Anna killed the engine. We lay low for 72 hours. You memorize every page in that folder. I'll be back before sunup with the next step. And if someone finds us, she handed me a black bag with something heavy inside. I didn't have to look. Then you do what she thought you never would, she said. You fight like hell. And just like that, she was gone. I sat on the mattress with the red folder open across my lap, knees shaking, a can of tuna untouched beside me. My son had fallen asleep on the second mattress across the room, his tiny hand still clutching the zipper of his backpack like it was the only solid thing in his world. I envied that clarity. Page 8, Wells Fargo, account ending in 1914, my name. Her address, monthly transfers from a shell corporation, one I'd never heard of but apparently managed on paper. Page 9, another account, same name, different bank, same forged signature. And then, starting from page 10, the loan applications. 4 in total. Each one made to look like I was using our home as collateral. Each one with a fake email address, 1 character off from mine. I'd seen the tactic before in fraud webinars at work, business email compromise. Just one letter off, and most people never notice. Except this time, I was the mark. My own wife had become my hacker. Anna sat across from me, watching my face, not pitying, not apologizing, just waiting. She's framing me, I said, the words dry in my mouth like they belonged to someone else. Anna didn't even blink. She started last March, after that retreat in the Keys, you remember? I nodded. She said she needed time alone to think. She met with a financial consultant, then with Caldwell. That's when she filed the trust revision draft. My brain pulled up the calendar. March. That was when she'd started insisting we split accounts for better tracking. When she told me she'd hired a tax advisor because I wasn't detail-oriented, it had all felt so reasonable. She built you into a risk, Anna said, her tone flat. An unstable, financially irresponsible man with a history of over-leveraging assets. She didn't just want custody, she wanted plausible cause to seize everything. House, trust, even your son's future assets. You'd vanish, she'd stabilize, and she'd walk away with clean hands. I turned the page, a draft report from a private fraud investigator. Title, Flagged Activity, Suspicious Patterns, Linked to Subject, Redacted. She hadn't submitted it, not yet, but it was ready. He'll look guilty in a background check, I said aloud. Not just guilty, Anna said. Disqualified. From guardianship. From employment in financial sectors. From basic credibility. A quote was circled in pen. Subject shows signs of intentional misrepresentation and fund misallocation. Recommend preliminary review by local authorities if evidence escalates. I swallowed. Did she pay for this? She built it herself, Anna said. Piece by piece, she fed the data into the system, then nudged someone to flag it. I stood up, walked to the wall, and leaned against the cinder block, folder still open in one hand. I tried to breathe. That's when my son stirred. He didn't sit up, didn't say anything, just opened his eyes and looked at me. You okay, Dad? No. Not by any metric that made sense, but I looked back at him and forced the words. Yeah, we're okay. Because he was the only reason I hadn't let the folder fall to the ground and curled up in defeat. I sat back down. Page 13, photocopies of a safety deposit key. Location, not our usual bank. Under a company name I didn't recognize, cross-referenced to a box leased 6 months ago, listed as a co-renter, Michael Jennings. My name, but not me. Is this the impersonator? I asked. Anna nodded. We don't have a face yet, but the bank might, if you had a way in. I did, a friend, one I hadn't called in years, but he worked as a systems analyst for the bank's regional fraud unit. I stared at the key image, memorized every cut and edge. The last page of the folder wasn't paper, it was a flash drive, taped to the backing with a note, play last. Did you watch it? I asked. Anna looked away. Once? I hesitated, plugged it into the burner laptop Anna had pulled from the briefcase earlier. The video was simple. Grainy, security footage, timestamp. 2 weeks ago, my wife, sitting across from a man, broad-shouldered, buzzed hair, dark coat. She handed him something. He nodded, took it, left. The sound was off, but there was one frame Anna had paused. She rewound to it and hit freeze. Her hand was on the man's wrist. Tattoo, barely visible. 3 symbols, a crown, a flame, and an infinity sign. Anna whispered, he's not just a proxy, he's a cleaner. She didn't just want you gone, she wanted no trace left behind. I felt everything inside me go still. The betrayal wasn't emotional. It wasn't about someone else in her bed. It was architectural. This was an execution plan. And I wasn't just the target, I was already in it. But I still had one thing she underestimated, me. Breathing, watching, planning. And that folder, it wasn't evidence, it was fuel. We drove the last stretch without headlights. Anna had killed them 2 miles back when the dirt road narrowed and the trees started leaning in like sentries. There were no markers, no mailbox, just a rusted out fence post and a faded sign that used to say private property. My uncle's place hadn't seen a utility bill in 15 years, which made it perfect. The safe house was a single-story cottage with peeling cedar panels, a warped porch, and no insulation to speak of. My uncle had used it during his I hate people phase, which frankly might have lasted until he died. The power still worked. Barely. A generator hummed in the shed out back. There was no Wi-Fi, no landline, no smart anything. I carried my son inside, tucked him into the cot in the corner, and covered him with an old wool blanket that smelled like oil and mothballs. He didn't wake up. I envied that. Then I stepped back outside, pulled both our phones from my jacket, and crushed them with a cinder block. It felt more symbolic than necessary, but I wasn't taking chances. Anna handed me a burner phone. It was one of those Nokia bricks that could survive a nuclear winter. "Same one you used in Arizona," she said. "You kept it?" "I kept everything," she said, because I knew she would too. Once she left, I locked the door, pulled the shades, and spread the contents of the red folder across the floor. Then I retrieved something I hadn't touched in 6 years, an old Glock wrapped in a flannel shirt, hidden in a toolbox under the porch. The slide was stiff, but the rounds were clean. I didn't sleep. At 2:11 a.m., I powered on the burner and called the only man I knew who could operate in shadows without making noise. Jonas Monroe, ex-cop, private investigator, quietly retired after a wrongful termination scandal he never talked about. I'd hired him once, years ago, to track a potential embezzler at my old firm. He picked up on the second ring. "You sound like hell. I need eyes on my house. Discreet. And I need a background profile run on my wife." Long pause, then, "I assume this isn't for divorce court?" "No, it's for survival." Another pause. "All right, I'll tap in tonight. You'll have a file in 12 hours. I gave him the burner number, the address of the safe house, and a single request. If I don't pick up in 48 hours, send everything to the state AG's office with the note, contingency, red line. Jonas didn't ask questions. He never did. I hung up and went back to the papers. The timeline was everything. I needed to reconstruct the exact sequence. When she opened the fake accounts, when she met with Caldwell, when she changed the trust. I found it on page 23, a receipt, not financial, digital, a calendar export from her Google account, hidden under a label called medical. Inside it, meetings, labeled vaguely, therapy, wellness, check-in. But the locations were all wrong. One of them was at a private banking office in Connecticut. Another was at a notary agency 90 miles from her house. I mapped them. Every one of them fit within the shell operations movement. She'd plotted her shifts like a general laying siege, and I, idiot that I was still playing catch-up in the trenches. At 3:47 a.m., I found something else. A photo slipped between the pages, not printed, Polaroid, old school, me at a company event 3 years ago. In the background, my wife and Caldwell. He's in profile, but the tattoo on his wrist is there. Crown, flame, infinity. They'd known each other that long, which meant the whole damn marriage might have been a cover, or at least the last few years of it. I stared at the image until the edges went blurry. Then I checked the corners. There, faint pencil scribbles. Martha's Vineyard, Septine. That was the trip we were supposed to take to save our marriage. The one she swore was just us, no distractions. Except she'd stayed behind an extra night for a work call. They always stay behind for a work call. The rage came next. I stood up, paced the room, tried not to shout. My son stirred, so I sat back down and breathed through it. I laid the gun beside me, not for show, for comfort. By sunrise, I had a full timeline drawn on butcher paper I found in a drawer, red lines connected to names, transactions circled, photos thumbtacked to the wooden walls. She'd planned everything down to the narrative she would tell. Financial instability, mental decline, withdrawal from family life. All the symptoms were there. All the documentation backed it. Except now I had the counter-narrative, and by the time Jonas called back, I'd already begun writing the speech I'd record if I didn't make it out. Not a goodbye, a trigger, something she couldn't bury, because this wasn't about escaping anymore. This was about rewiring the trap and making sure she walked into it. At 8:36 the next morning, the burner lit up with a single word. Delivered. No greeting, no signature. That was Jonas. If he said he sent something, it meant the earth had shifted under someone's feet. I opened the email on the ancient Dell laptop Anna had stashed in a locked drawer beneath the kitchenette. No webcam, no Bluetooth. The kind of machine conspiracy theorists use because they're convinced everything modern is compromised. At this point, I wasn't far off from joining them. Attached, a zip file labeled Vocals C Intercept. Inside, 4 audio files, each one timestamped, each one no longer than 3 minutes. I didn't hesitate. The first recording began mid-conversation, but the voices were unmistakable. My wife, calm, clipped, smiling through the phone like she was planning a fundraiser. The man, older, foreign accent, Eastern European maybe, slick, calculated, the kind of voice that didn't use contractions. He said, "Clause can be activated post-incident. The trust absorbs through default. You are listed as primary trustee. There are no dispute clauses if the subject is declared deceased without pending litigation." She answered without pause. "And the boy inherits at 25. Until then, I manage." Silence. Then she added almost flippantly, "He's too docile. It won't look suspicious. He never fights." I hit pause, stood up, tasted acid in the back of my throat. Too docile. It echoed in my skull like a gunshot in a tunnel. That's what she thought of me. That's the entire reason this plan worked. Because she never feared me, never believed I'd push back. And now, sitting in a rotting cottage with the walls covered in maps and forged signatures, she still had no idea I'd heard her say the words. I played the rest. In one recording, she references a test dose and says, "He took it without a word, half a glass of wine, and he was asleep in 40 minutes. If we increase by 20%, he won't even know what hit him." The man responded, "You must be certain he does not regain consciousness during staging. That complicates things." "Trust me," she said, "he'll be gone before the chicken gets cold." I closed the laptop, and for the first time in my life, I wanted to kill someone. Not out of passion, not out of vengeance, but precision. The way a surgeon removes a tumor, the way a farmer burns a field to kill the rot. But I wouldn't, because that would hand her the ending she wanted. Instead, I would remove her slowly, clinically, paper by paper, and I'd start with the clause. I grabbed the trust binder from the stack, our estate documents filed 2 years ago. I flipped to Section D, page 17. In the event of the grantor's death or legal incapacitation, the primary co-trustee shall assume all rights and fiduciary responsibilities until the minor beneficiary reaches the age of 25. There it was, plain, unremarkable, deadly. The clause wasn't just a legal formality, it was the endgame. She didn't want freedom. She wanted control, legacy. A sanitized narrative where I died a tragic gentleman, and she stepped up as the brave widow. I flipped back a few pages, found my signature. It looked like mine, but I remembered that day. She'd said I could sign the copy later. She faxed it in. I never signed this page. She did, and she had someone forge mine. There was a knock at the door. My spine stiffened, but it was Anna. She stepped in with a bag of canned food and a manila envelope. "You need to hear this," I said, gesturing to the laptop. She didn't sit, just listened. When the line about "he's too docile" played, she winced like it physically hurt, but she didn't interrupt. When it ended, she simply said, "Then we activate our clause." I raised an eyebrow. She handed me the envelope. Jonas pulled her old tax records. She used to manage a grant fund in Vermont before she met you. There was an audit, nothing criminal, but there were irregularities. One donor's estate vanished during probate. Records got sealed. "Are you saying that?" "I'm saying this might not be her first time." I took the folder, opened it. Inside, notarized letters, emails between her and a probate judge, financial adjustments to a dying man's estate. She was a technician, a quiet ghostwriter of people's disappearances. And I'd married her. I sat back down, looked at the map, at the red string, then at my son, still sleeping peacefully. She thought she was writing a succession plan, but she forgot something. I'm still alive. And now, I wasn't just reading her script. I was rewriting the final act. I spent the next 48 hours, like a man, peeling wallpaper off a burning house, fast, desperate, and knowing damn well that underneath every layer was something worse. The red folder had given me a roadmap, but now I needed terrain, paper trails, asset movements, real names, real signatures, or the fakes that looked too damn close. Anna returned with an old scanner, a camping generator, and a bag of grocery store sandwiches we didn't touch. I scanned everything: trust docs, loan applications, bank records, cross-referenced email headers, traced phone numbers through open-source scrapers Jonas had built years ago. I didn't eat, barely drank. The only thing that mattered now was understanding how deep this hole went, and if I was already buried in it. By noon on the second day, I found the first property, A condo in Charleston, listed under JM Holdings, a shell with me as the managing agent. Purchase price $412,000. Bought all cash 6 months ago. I hadn't been within 400 miles of Charleston in 10 years. The deed, notarized in my name. The signature looked like mine, but too clean. That's the trick with forgery. No human writes the exact same way every time. Forgers always over-perfect. They make it look like the DMV version of your name. Polished, intentional. Anna and I pored over the title chain. She kept asking the same question I hated hearing. Did you ever sign anything around this date, a lease, a tax form? No, I kept repeating. She handled the paperwork. Those words tasted like dirt now. The second property popped up 3 hours later. A cabin in Colorado. Same setup. Shell LLC. I was the registered manager. She had used a different bank. This one? Wells Fargo. The same one with the phantom account under my name. A perfect loop. Both properties were used as collateral on private loans. Balloon loans, to be exact. High risk, low documentation, short terms. In other words, loans designed to fail, and when they defaulted, the clause in the trust would trigger a forced asset seizure, unless the assets had already been transferred into new holding companies, which they had, one of which was registered under her maiden name. The real knife came from Jonas. He texted, "Check email. You'll want to sit down." I opened the file. Surveillance footage, bank lobby, a Tuesday 2 weeks ago. The camera showed a man about my height, same build, same salt and pepper hair, wearing glasses I hadn't worn since college, dressed in the Navy windbreaker I lost in 2018. But the walk, the gait, wrong. Too stiff, too rehearsed. He signed a stack of documents at the teller window, handed over a New Hampshire ID, my face, a beard I haven't worn in years, but the hands, covered in slight prosthetics, not medical, cosmetic. Something to disguise bone structure. Anna played the footage on loop, frame by frame. "Your ears are different," she muttered. What? Impersonators can fake a lot, but not cartilage shape. His ears are lower, pulled back, probably glued prosthetics. Subtle, but real. She clicked pause. "That's not you," she said. "Try proving that to a judge," I muttered. That's when the third document hit me like a freight train. A tax lien, filed against the LLC I supposedly managed. Amount owed, $2,000. Non-payment, that triggers asset freeze, which then voids my trustee status due to financial mismanagement. A clause she buried in Addendum C of the estate plan. It was elegant. First, she made me the owner of fake companies. Then she took loans out against those fake assets. Then she let those loans rot. Then she triggered the trust clause. And through it all, she stayed clean. The money went nowhere near her accounts. It passed through 2 consulting firms, then into a nonprofit she volunteered with, then into a silent partner fund with no paper connection to her, except one, a note on an old iCloud backup from a shared calendar event 3 years ago. Dinner with Cynthia, discuss off-books funding. Cynthia was the registered agent on the LLC that defaulted. I stared at that one line like it was scripture. "You realize what she's doing, right?" I asked Anna. "She's deleting you," Anna said quietly. "Not just killing, not just replacing, erasing. Financially, legally, morally, emotionally, existentially." That word hung in the air like smoke. I looked around at the walls, covered in maps, photos, receipts, scanned documents. They made me look like a lunatic in hiding, which, I now understood, was part of the plan. When she filed, it wouldn't just be for custody. It'd be for a declaration of incompetence. She wouldn't grieve. She'd explain. She'd stand in front of a court and say, "I tried everything. He just fell apart. It's been going on for years." She had the documents, the evidence, the impersonator, the debt, the clause, all of it. Except one thing, me, still breathing, still fighting, still pissed. I stared at my reflection in the window for a long time before I made the call. I didn't look like myself anymore. The beard was uneven. My eyes looked like I hadn't slept in weeks, and I hadn't. My shirt had streaks of dried coffee and blood from a blister I picked open 2 nights ago. I looked like what she wanted the world to see. Unstable, ragged, paranoid, but my voice was steady when I dialed. Thomas Breck. The name sat in my mouth like a lifeline. He answered on the third ring. The background noise told me he was out in his garden again, probably pruning the lemon trees he babied since retiring from the compliance world. "Didn't think I'd hear from you again," he said without warmth, but not hostility either. "I've got something," I said, "and it's bad. You always did have a talent for understatement. I need your eyes on it, and if I'm not completely insane, I need your help triggering a freeze." That made him pause. I heard his shears stop clipping. "On what? Trusts, transfers, multiple, domestic and offshore, identity manipulation involved, forgeries, shells, possibly RICO exposure. Who's the target?" "My wife." Silence again. "Then send me everything." Use the old protocol. I uploaded the entire package, scans, images, audio, a written brief, and a redacted timeline. Using the encrypted file transfer system he made me memorize during a white-collar seminar we both used to teach a decade ago. I paced for the next hour. Anna sat on the porch, cleaning her gun in silence like she was prepping for a scene she hoped wouldn't happen. Just after midnight, the burner buzzed. "Breck, you weren't hallucinating. This is an operational erasure plan. Whoever architected it has done this before." "Me. Can it be stopped?" "Breck, yes. But once I file the manipulation claim, it creates a compliance trail. She'll be alerted within 24 hours that the trust has been frozen." "Me. That's fine." "Breck, no, it's not. That means she'll know you're alive. You sure you're ready for her to come looking?" I typed one word, "yes." But that wasn't enough. Not this time. I pulled the battered tripod out from the drawer, set up the burner's camera, sat down in front of the peeling wood panel wall, adjusted the lighting so my face was clear, tired, gaunt, but alive, and I hit record. My name is James P. Ryland. If you're watching this, it means I've either been taken, incapacitated, or worse. I was the target of an erasure plan constructed by my wife, Melinda Ryland, born Melinda Cooper, using forged documents, impersonators, and financial misrepresentation to void my legal identity and seize control of our estate, our properties, and the future of our son, Aaron Ryland. I paused, let the words settle into the lens. "I have provided verifiable documents, timelines, and names. If anything happens to me or my son, I am authorizing this video and the attached evidence to be sent to the following: the State Attorney General, FINRA, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and the investigative unit at the Washington Herald. I am not unstable. I am not missing. I am hiding. Because this isn't about divorce, it's about deletion." I ended the recording. Watched it once, no edits. Then I uploaded it to 3 separate encrypted servers, each linked to a different Deadman trigger, one through an old co-worker in Arizona, one through Jonas, and one tied to a security key Anna had buried in a waterproof container 2 counties over. I didn't feel proud. I felt cold, resolved. "I want her off balance," I told Breck later that night. "She will be," he said. "But be careful. Cornered planners don't panic. They escalate." "I know," I replied, "but I need her to escalate. It's the only way I can prove motive." He exhaled like a man already regretting what came next. "I'll file the freeze in the morning. You'll get a notice confirmation. That'll be the shot across the bow." I hung up. Aaron stirred on his cot, murmuring something about a soccer game. His voice cracked, dry from the stale air in the cottage. I sat beside him, smoothed his hair back, didn't speak. He was the only part of the story that wasn't tactical. He was the reason I wasn't dead. I rose again, laid the Glock by the door, turned off the light, and waited for the storm to come looking. Courthouse Room 214 wasn't glamorous. Beige walls, flickering fluorescents, folding chairs that squeaked every time someone shifted their weight, but it had one thing I needed: witnesses. No cameras, no security detail, just enough administrative theater to make it feel safe. For her, she thought it was a procedural handoff, the final signature to transfer control of all remaining estate assets into her name, under the clause activated by my presumed death. Presumed. That word was about to become her downfall. I'd had Breck file the challenge quietly. No press, no flags in the system, until the moment the final documents were being walked into record, and this meeting
Just a clarification session scheduled by her lawyer's assistant who happened to owe Breck a favor. She walked in 5 minutes early. Of course she did, wearing black like a uniform. Not grieving, composed.
High heels, hair pinned back in that carefully casual style meant to scream, "I've moved on, but I'm still dignified." Her lawyer, Connors, walked beside her, carrying the briefcase. Slick, confident, the type who smelled like expensive cologne and loopholes. They took the seats closest to the registrar's desk. She didn't glance around the room. Why would she? In her mind, there was no reason to be cautious anymore. I came in through the side entrance. No fanfare, no announcement, just the sound of the door creaking and a slight shift in the air. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes met mine. Nothing in her face changed. No gasp, no recoil, not even a flicker of guilt. Only one sentence. "You're alive." I stepped forward, the red folder in my hands like a gavel. "And legally," I said, "still the sole trustee." Connors stood halfway, mouth opening to object, but I cut him off by placing a single sheet of paper on the table. Timestamps. Notarized. Real-time digital verification tied to the filing made less than 24 hours after I disappeared. "Your amendment was never valid," I said, "because I never disappeared. I was in hiding because you tried to erase me." She didn't blink. I opened the folder. "Let's talk about the impersonator you hired," I continued. "You know, the one who accessed the safety deposit boxes, signed the loan applications, and wore prosthetics to look like me at 3 different banks." Connors muttered something under his breath. Probably Latin. Probably irrelevant. "See," I said, pulling the photo out and sliding it across the table. "He left fingerprints. Not mine. His. Anna had confirmed it 2 days ago, courtesy of a forensic contact Jonas had roped in from his NYPD days. The impersonator had slipped when opening the deposit box in Connecticut. Gloves off. Partial print. Enough to rule me out entirely. Enough to implicate them both. Your shell companies," I continued, "are now linked to defaulted loans that I never applied for. The properties, secured under forged documents, the tax liens, engineered to trigger fiduciary incompetence clauses." I turned to Connors. "And if you were dumb enough to notarize anything yourself, I'd advise you to find counsel. Fast." He paled, but not her. She sat still, her eyes locked on mine like 2 tectonic plates about to grind. "You've been very quiet," I said. She smiled, just a little. "I knew you weren't dead." "Then why all the paperwork?" I asked. "Why the trust revision? Why the psychological reports? The withdrawn behavior logs you submitted to the mediator last fall?" No response. So I added the final card to the table. A USB drive. "This contains audio files, 4 of them. Your voice, discussing dosages, clauses, inheritance, a man's death. If anything happens to me or my son, they go to state and federal investigators, and a dozen reporters waiting on a keyword." Connors grabbed for the drive. I pulled it back. "Not today," I said. "You'll get your copy right after my lawyer files the injunctive motion to reverse every asset transfer you've attempted in the past 6 months." She didn't move, didn't breathe. I leaned in. "You forgot something," I whispered. "Planning a death isn't the same as surviving a confrontation. You were ready for a ghost, but I'm not a ghost. I'm the man you thought you buried, walking back into the room with the receipts." A clerk entered and looked up from her clipboard. "Are we ready to begin?" I didn't answer. She did. "Yes," she said, still composed, still confident. "But we'll need to change the agenda." Her voice didn't shake, but her eyes finally broke from mine. Only for a moment. That was enough. She knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But for the first time since she'd poisoned my wine, she understood something. I wasn't cornered anymore. She was. They kept her seated for exactly 5 minutes after the meeting ended. Long enough for the paper shuffle. Long enough for her mask to hold. I stood in the hallway just outside room 214 waiting. The fluorescent lights buzzed above like insects trapped in glass. My fingers tapped the USB drive in my pocket. 3 agencies had reviewed its contents in the last 36 hours, and the moment Connors demanded to see it on record, the trigger phrase was logged. That was the final condition. The marshal opened the side door. "It's time." Inside the adjoining chamber, technically a mediation overflow room, 3 people sat in folding chairs. A woman in a blue blazer from the Financial Crimes Division, a man with an IRS badge clipped to his collar, and another in plain clothes from the Bureau's Cybercrimes Task Force. All had files. All had read everything.
Melinda entered like she was still in control. Calm. Controlled. Her posture screamed dignity, damage control. She didn't see the agents until the door clicked shut behind her. Connors froze first, the kind of freeze lawyers hate, where even their mouth forgets the choreography. The woman in the blazer stood up. Melinda Cooper Ryland, you are being served with formal notices of investigation for the following: financial fraud, willful forgery of federal documents, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit identity manipulation with intent to defraud institutional lenders and exploit inheritance clauses. Melinda didn't move, didn't blink. The man from cybercrime continued. We have verified your voice on multiple recordings coordinating the acquisition of false credentials and planning the incapacitation of your legal spouse for the purpose of triggering trust clause activation. Connors finally managed a whisper. Melinda, what the hell is this? She turned to him slowly, surgically. Don't talk. The IRS rep laid a folder in front of her. You'll also find a notice of lien against 3 properties tied to shell companies registered in your husband's name, but linked through cash movement logs to accounts under your maiden identity.
We are freezing those accounts effective immediately. Her jaw clenched. Still, she didn't speak, so I did. From the doorway. I warned you, I said, not with threats, just with facts. And you didn't listen. She turned toward me like a storm turning on its pivot. You ruined everything, she snapped. No, I said quietly, stepping into the room. You did. I just made sure it stuck. That was the moment the mask finally cracked. Not the scream, not the accusations, not even the shock of her lawyer slowly taking one step back, palms half raised, distancing himself like she suddenly had fangs. It was her eyes. They were searching, not for help, not for escape, but for comprehension, because up until that second, she still believed she could fix it, spin it, deny it, claim victimhood. Now she knew she'd underestimated me. I wasn't the man who ignored the fine print anymore. The door behind me opened. A different marshal stepped in. Beside him, Aaron, my son. He didn't ask questions. He just walked to me and wrapped his arms around my waist, holding tight. I looked down at him. No tears. Just the quiet tension of a child who understood more than he ever should have had to. Are we safe now? He asked. I looked up, at the agents, at her, at the last threads of her illusion falling apart like dust in a sunbeam. Almost, I said. Melinda stood suddenly, not toward me, toward Aaron. 2 agents blocked her before she could take a step. Her voice cracked for the first time. He's my son. No, I said, he's our son, and I won't let you script his life like you tried to script my death. That was the line. No drama, no shouting, just truth. The marshal placed his hand gently on her shoulder. She didn't resist, but her eyes never left Aaron, and he didn't even look at her. He just held on to me. Because sometimes survival isn't loud. It's quiet, it's legal, it's planned, and it's final. The gavel hit the bench with a clean, satisfying crack that echoed across the courtroom like a final nail being driven into a long, quiet coffin. Full custody granted to James Ryland, trustee authority reaffirmed, prior amendments nullified. 6 months had passed since that day in room 214. Melinda sat across the courtroom now in an orange jumpsuit, her hair longer, her face thinner. Still composed, she was always composed, but the mask had hardened into something lifeless. The woman who once held dinner parties with a laugh that could bounce off crystal glass now blinked like a defendant trying to remember what dignity used to feel like. She didn't speak during the hearing, didn't look at me, barely acknowledged Aaron when he stood beside me in a pressed shirt and tie, fidgeting with a paperclip he'd swiped from the clerk's desk. The trust had been dismantled and rebuilt under court supervision, every clause rewritten, every loophole closed. The assets remained in my name, but with a secondary line of defense. In the event of my death, custody and management passed not to any biological relative, but to Anna. Melinda had tried to fight that, of course, tried to argue it was inappropriate, unfair, even appealed to maternal rights in a separate motion that got thrown out before the ink dried, because Anna had done what Melinda never counted on. She testified fully, publicly, with every file, every call log, every calendar sync Melinda had ever shared with her back when they still believed in the performance of family. After the hearing, I shook the judge's hand, nodded to the bailiff, and walked Aaron out to the car. We didn't talk. There wasn't much left to say. The courthouse parking lot smelled like warm asphalt and old engine grease. Aaron climbed into the passenger seat, then paused, pulled something from his jacket pocket. An envelope. I was cleaning my desk yesterday, he said. Found this. Mom told me never to open it. Said if anything ever happened and she couldn't give it to you herself, I should hand it over. I stared at the envelope. No stamp, no return address, just my name. In her handwriting. My stomach tightened. I almost didn't take it. Almost. But I did. Inside, not a letter, not a confession, not a threat, a blueprint, professionally drafted, meticulously labeled. Final contingency, if he survives. I scanned the first page. Instructions to call a specific attorney, set up a media campaign, claim emotional abuse, target the boy, leverage the court system slowly through third-party filings, trigger psychological evaluations, leak stories to tabloids about the grieving widow being stalked. It wasn't vengeance. It was legacy management. She had planned for both outcomes, my death and my survival. She wasn't going to try to win. She was going to undo me. Slowly, quietly, strategically. If the erasure failed physically, she'd just pivot to reputation. She'd grind me down until I was the man the courts feared and the boy pitied. But this time, I wasn't reading the script after it happened. I had the pages before the first cue. That was her mistake. She never counted on someone flipping to the final act while the curtains were still opening. I folded the blueprint, slid it back into the envelope. Aaron looked up. Was it bad? I shook my head. It was her. He leaned back, kicked off his shoes. Are we really done now? I looked in the rearview mirror. The courthouse behind us. A future in front of us. Quiet, uncertain, real. Almost, I said. But this time, we're writing our own ending. He nodded and reached for the radio. As we pulled onto the road, I allowed myself the smallest smile. She had designed a plan so perfect, so surgically layered, that she thought she couldn't lose. But her arrogance was louder than any bang at the house that night. Because that wasn't the explosion. This was the demolition of everything she thought couldn't be traced. Everything she thought I was too docile to notice, everything she built with lies and trusted to collapse on cue. She thought I was gone. She didn't realize I was still loading the match.